Good afternoon and welcome into the Saints postgame show presented by Verizon. I'm Caroline Gonzalez, joined by John DeShazier here in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Unfortunately, your New Orleans Saints fell to the Atlanta Falcons today, 26-9. JD, it just seemed like nothing could go right for the Saints today. Can you describe a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, another professional team came in and played to its potential. The Falcons have been 1-7. They lost 1-6. But no one expected this Falcons team to be 1-7 at this point in the season, and they played the way they're capable of playing. Unfortunately for the Saints, they didn't play up to their capabilities. We saw the Saints during a 6-game winning streak win in a variety of ways, and unfortunately, everything that possibly could go wrong today pretty much did go wrong. They couldn't run the ball very well. The time of possession was really bad for the Saints, and that's something they dominated during their winning streak. They couldn't get off the field on third down defensively, couldn't really force turnovers. Just, again, a lot of the things that went right during the winning streak went wrong, and yet, big perspective here, the Saints are 7-2. They lead the NFC South, and if you had asked anybody after 9 games if the Saints would be 7-2, I think a lot of people would have been satisfied.
Absolutely, and JD, we will be hearing from Sean Payton and Drew Brees in their live press conferences. We will get that to you whenever they come to the podium. JD, 9 penalties today for the Saints for 60 yards compared to Atlanta's 6 penalty for 38 yards. It just seemed like every other second you had a penalty being called and the Saints coming back for yard after yard.
Well, penalties and timely penalties. The hands to the face, which gives you, defensively, gives you an automatic first down to the other opposing offense. We had an offensive pass interference, or excuse me, a personal foul. Yep. We had some holdings. So a variety of roughing the punter. Again, things that kept Atlanta on the field when the Saints might have been able to get off of it defensively and maybe force a punt. So all of those things, when you have that many miscues mentally, that many miscues physically, there are going to be issues on the scoreboard. Now, a lot of those things you can coach out. The hands to the face, those are technical issues that can be coached out of a team, and yet you hate to see that happening here in the 9th game of the season, Week 10.
Now, some positives to take away, JD. We did see Jared Cook today. Obviously, Drew Brees was back for the second week after that thumb injury, but we did see some more production from Jared Cook, who told you that he wanted to have, we're actually going to go now to head coach Sean Payton.
Obviously, it's a disappointing finish for us. The first thing I would say is give Atlanta credit. They beat us well in all 3 areas, played better than us. You pick a situation, and there's a good chance they won that situation. Third down, they were better, both sides of the ball. Penalties, they were better. So collectively, we've got to do a better job. That starts with me, and it's kind of one of those. It's not a lesson, but this league is too good week to week where you can go in and not be focused and ready. This has always been a game played with emotion, and I thought they outplayed us. They outcoached us, and they deserve to win. Any questions?
How much of the way the game played out was dictated by their ability to run the ball?
Well, look, I think that had something to do with it, but I think the third down stats were, I think they had 5 first downs by penalty, and those were good calls. So the drives for them extended, and the drives for us didn't. I think they were going to be patient and mix it up. They were more effective running the ball than teams we've seen to date for quite a while. So, again, I'm sure when we look at the tape tomorrow with our players, there's going to be a lot of things we want to clean up.
Did you have a problem with any of the hands to the face?
No, I thought the officiating was pretty good in this game. That had nothing to do with this game.
Did you see this
No. Hey, listen, we as coaches, we see these things come every week, and yet they don't come, and we play well. But we think that way. So, no, that's the challenge always of this game, is making sure that, you've hit on everything. Making sure your practice week, all those things. But listen, we didn't play well enough to win today. Really against anybody.
Was there a point in the game when you noticed that all of a sudden the team didn't focus on one play?
That's something that happens, I think, throughout the game. You begin to see I mean, the first half, we're in at halftime, and it's a, shoot, one-score game. I thought the third down numbers were telling, though.
Coach, is there any aspect when you're doing film review that you're going to look for?
Meaning of this game? Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of corrections. And look, it's a good group here. They understand tomorrow will be tough to watch it. It'll go down. But shame on us if we can't, get those corrections made. But that won't be a problem. It's much easier to come in and watch tape after you win, but that's one of the things about this game that, creates a little bit of toughness and grit.
Anything you see specifically just with the offensive line allowing pressure?
I think that's one of a handful of things today. All right, thanks.
That was head coach Sean Payton. We will be hearing from quarterback Drew Brees shortly when he is done in the locker room. We will get him at the podium as soon as he is up. JD, we heard from Sean Payton. Obviously, he said they deserve to win today, meaning the Falcons deserve to win. We weren't good enough, meaning the Saints weren't good enough to beat really anyone today.
There's no way to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody with eyes saw exactly what happened on the field, and the Saints just weren't up to the task today. For whatever reason, they weren't up to the task. You can blame it on the bye week and say they were a little bit sluggish or whatever you want to frame it as. Unfortunately, the Saints just weren't as efficient as they've become accustomed to being during this winning streak. And that's a difficult thing for the Saints to take, obviously. It's a difficult thing for Saints fans to see. It's been really, really hard out here on this game. 26-9, that's not something that anybody expected to see out of the Saints today. We expected to see a team coming off the bye, and especially after that first drive where they go down and get the field goal, they looked really efficient, but for a couple of penalties. And unfortunately, the penalties turned out to be the harbinger of what was going to happen for most of this game.
Absolutely, and as we were saying before we went to Sean Payton, Jared Cook today, we saw some production out of him today, and you talked to him earlier this week. He said he wanted this second half of the season to be more production for him, and we saw that out of him today.
And he's going to be productive. He's in a situation where he lines up probably opposite Michael Thomas. The attention Michael Thomas is going to draw, so he's going to get some openings in the opposing defense. But the Saints are going to have to take better advantage of it. They got to get in the end zone, and they'll be the first ones to tell you, one, field goals aren't going to win you a lot of NFL games. Now, we know they were fortunate enough to beat Dallas 12-10 with 4 field goals, but for the most part, you've got to be able to score touchdowns in the red zone. They got to the red zone a couple times today, ended up with field goals, and that creates a huge difference, a huge momentum swing going the other way, because defensively, that's what you want. If you're going to give up points, you want it to be field goals, and the Falcons really had to be feeling pretty good about themselves defensively from what they saw.
Michael Thomas today became the fastest player to reach 400 receptions in NFL history. Obviously, a fantastic performance out of Michael Thomas today, JD, but you have to think that the Saints want more targets for Drew Brees. I mean, obviously, you saw more production out of Jared Cook today. You saw a big one from Traquan Smith when he got his helmet knocked off, but you have to think you would want more offensive weapons for Drew Brees to target.
Yeah, and you do. You want to see a little bit more balance. Now, Alvin Kamara is getting worked back into the lineup, so we'll see how that progresses. But the Saints didn't have the ball for a ton of times. They didn't have a lot of snaps in this game, and offensively, that's something, again, that they've been able to take advantage of during the winning streak. They had, 33 minutes time of possession average for the season, third most in the NFL coming into this game. They were nowhere near that in this game because Atlanta controlled the clock. They kept converting third downs. They kept staying on the field offensively, and they kept keeping the ball away from the Saints. And really, a lot of times, your best defense is a good offense, and the Falcons found that out today. They kept the Saints on their heels, got them a little bit desperate, got them in passing situations, and then the Falcons, who came into this game with 7 sacks for the season, have 6 sacks in this game because they got the Saints in a lot of obvious passing situations.
Well, we saw Andrus Peat leave the game early before the half with an injury. We will know more later in the week on that injury with Andrus Peat. But as far as rushing for the Saints tonight, Alvin Kamara, 18 yards, Latavius Murray with 12. That's not what we're used to seeing out of the Saints backfield.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with playing from behind. You're trying to speed up a little bit. You don't have the ball a whole lot. You're getting in third down situations. The penalties put you in situations where you're behind the sticks. So instead of maybe 2nd and 3, maybe a 2nd and 13 or 2nd and 8. And those are passing situations where you're not going to run it as much. And again, Saints just didn't possess the ball a lot. They didn't convert a lot of third downs. They didn't really do a very good job of holding on to the football and creating sustained drives. If you can't create sustained drives to keep the opposing defense on the field, your defense is going to spend a lot of time on the field.
Yeah, and Saints defense surely did today. We saw, Cam Jordan, obviously the fearless leader for the Saints defense, but also Demario Davis. Now, we did see Marshawn Lattimore leave the game, try to come back, and then he left again. So, again, we'll know that more later in the week. But it forced P.J. Williams, who was serving his first game back after serving a 2-game suspension, and then it forced some things to be mismanaged, or not mismanaged, but some chaos kind of in the secondary.
It gets everybody a little bit out of whack.
Right.
P.J. Williams is basically a nickel now. You put him outside at corner, and then you can't do the same things that you would do with Marshawn Lattimore in terms of coverage. So we saw P.J. Williams maybe playing back a little bit more off receivers, whereas Marshawn Lattimore might be playing a little bit more press coverage and one-on-one. So those are things that affect you in a trickle-down fashion. Now, yes, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is playing in the nickel anyway, but P.J. Williams is generally, he'll go to dime. He'll play the sixth defensive back as opposed to now having to start at corner. So he's a guy who's played corner. He's listed at corner, and yet he's more comfortable nowadays. I believe he would even admit playing the nickel. So you get Marshawn Lattimore out, and all of a sudden, it's a trickle-down effect, and it doesn't throw things into chaos, but it gets everybody just a little bit out of position.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be hearing from quarterback Drew Brees as soon as he is at the podium. And, JD, we're right in the thick of division battles. You go next week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you have 3 division battles upcoming for the Saints. What does this loss mean for them?
Well, what it means is they're 7-2. I mean, because you have
big picture. That's not bad.
You've got to look at it big picture wise.
Right.
I mean, you can't go and and say, "Oh, woe is me," and doom and gloom. They're 7-2. They still lead the division, so they still control everything that they want to control. Everything the Saints need is right ahead of them. They control their destiny. But we saw today, it doesn't matter what your division rival's record is.
Yeah.
It's a division game. Everybody knows everybody's tendencies inside the division. You see these people twice a year, every year. So you're not going to walk out on the field and somebody's just going to, buckle at the knees because of who you are. They're going to come out. And look, the Falcons come in here and they say, okay, we're 1-7, they're 7-1. Who would like nothing better than to beat the Saints than the Falcons?
Right,
so they come out and they probably played their most complete, best game of this season. And I would imagine they would say that by far.
Absolutely, and that'll make the Thanksgiving game between the Saints and Falcons a little bit more interesting. And I want to get into special teams, JD, because we talked about it before the game. Will Lutz was 3 of 6 coming into this game recently, but he obviously performed well tonight. But Deontay Harris had a couple good runs today for the Saints. Yeah,
fortunately for him, he's progressing there. As a fan or as we're watching it, you want to see him pop one of those and maybe get him on the scoreboard with one of those because they're struggling so much offensively. They could have used all the help that they could use, and we've seen some games where the Saints have been able to do some things in special teams that really were big contributors to wins, and unfortunately, they weren't able to break one. And then the biggest thing with special teams was, when you get the roughing the punter penalty, when it's 4th and 11 and you're about to get off the field, you force a punt, and you're about to take possession, you're 2 scores down, you got yourself a chance to get into it, directly led to a field goal because it immediately put the Falcons in field goal range. And those are plays, I know that J.T. Gray wants to make a play, obviously. He's not out there to rough the punter. He blocked the punt in Chicago, but that play kept Atlanta on the field. It extended that drive. It led to a field goal. And in those situations, that's a mistake you can't have.
It seemed like the Saints, like we were talking about earlier, were expecting more of a pass-heavy offense from the Falcons, and immediately you kind of saw them get punched in the mouth a little bit with that run game from Devontae Freeman.
Well, credit the Falcons. I mean, they came in, they averaged 317 passing yards a game. That's #1 in the NFL. That's what they have been doing most effectively this season. They come out and they basically start out with a fly sweep, and they run the ball basically down the field on the same. And that's, that's good scheming. That's good coaching because they said, these are our tendencies. How do we go against our tendencies to catch this opponent off guard? And I think they went against those tendencies to catch the Saints off guard, and they really caught them off guard. I thought in that first drive where they end up getting a field goal out of it, but it really gave them a feel for, look, we might be able to do some things against this really good defense. We might be able to control some clock against them.
Well, again, if you're just joining us, unfortunately, your New Orleans Saints fell to the Atlanta Falcons today, 26-9 here in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. We're going to go ahead and cut to some highlights while we wait for quarterback Drew Brees.
Throw it. He's got a cannon coming for Thomas, and tiptoe, is he in? Oh, yes, he is! Ryan, quick throw, Jones, incomplete. He never had that one. What a hit by Lattimore. Ryan looking that way. Now he gets sacked. Big play by Demario Davis, who came right up the gut. Fringe of field goal range, 48 seconds. Blitz coming. Brees sees it and loads back to Thomas. Why not? Who's tackled inbounds. Brees has a lot of time. Now he's taking a shot down the field, and what a hit. And somehow it's held onto by Traquan Smith. Harris will take it out from 1 yard deep, looking to make a big return, and he might have one. Deontay Harris, the only one there, and he helps slow him down just a little bit. Going to throw it here. Ryan going to go deep. He's got a man. It's Ridley who's open, and it's intercepted. What a read by Marcus Williams.
Cam Jordan talks about it all the time. 24-hour rule. You flip the page tomorrow, you watch some film, and then you get over it. You work towards next week. But something that I think they are going to look at is this offensive line. Obviously, we know Andrews Pete went out of the game, but what can the offensive line do to improve going into next week?
Well, they just didn't protect very well, and we hadn't seen a game like this from this offensive line probably since week 2 against the Rams. I think that was the one where collectively they felt as if they had really been pushed around. And I know that Sean Payton felt that way too. They felt like they kind of been out physicaled in that game. I think they had 4 holding penalties in that game, maybe 5, with one of them being declined. That was the one game where I believe they felt like they were a little bit pushed around. This game probably falls into that category. It looks like they just got whipped a few times up front, and that's something that this offensive line isn't accustomed to happening to them. We're not accustomed to seeing happen to them because it's a really formidable offensive line. So that's one of the things that they will, address. And I'm sure, look, sometimes you just have that day at the office where, unfortunately, your opponent's got your number. The Falcons had their number. And then, again, you get a team behind, you get them in passing situations. They sacked Drew Brees 6 times because, you fall back into coverage and he's waiting for somebody to come uncover. And when it's 3rd and 14 and 15, those are long routes, and it takes a long time for those things to develop. And if you've got guys who are out there getting beaten, then you've got to back up the offensive lineman in there. And Will Clapp was out there fighting his heart out.
Yeah.
But look, the Falcons were really effective with that defensive line today. So I think the Saints will probably be a little bit more physical in the next game against Tampa Bay because, again, it's a division game. They've been a great defensive line during this run, so I don't think it'll be that hard to get back to being who they are.
Absolutely, and we're waiting on the results of that Tampa Bay versus Arizona Cardinals game. But going into next week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, what are some of the things that the Saints need to focus on going against this Jameis Winston-powered offense, who it's anybody's ball game going into it?
Well, the Saints they're going to have to be better and more efficient on 3rd down. They know that. They want to protect the football,
the basketball,
a little bit more because time of possession has been huge for them. It's been great in their favor. And again, when you have the ball, as long as the Saints have had the ball, that means you're pretty much imposing your will on the opposing team. We saw them basically run it down Chicago's throat. We saw them run it down Jacksonville's throat. We saw them run it down Arizona's throat. And those are the things that you see from a physical team. But a lot of that comes with converting 3rd downs, keeping possession of the football, building up plays. You're stockpiling plays against that opposing defense, so you're able to wear them down. That was something that did not happen here today. The Falcons' defense extremely fresh because the Saints couldn't keep them on the field for a long period of time with some sustained drives. And again, that's not something we've become accustomed to seeing out of this team during the winning streak. That's something they absolutely have to get back to. Can't have your defense on the field as much as the Saints' defense was on the field today and expect a whole lot of success.
Absolutely, and I'm hearing that Tampa Bay did defeat the Arizona Cardinals today, so they'll be coming off of a win going into next week. 30-27 was the result of that game. We talked earlier in the pregame show, Drew Brees coming back. He didn't show any rust against the Cardinals 2 weeks ago. Obviously, they had the bye week. Drew Brees played great tonight. He's always going to play great, but again, that coverage was certainly an issue.
It's tough to tell if he was rusty today or not because he spent half the game on his hiney. So if he's spending a whole lot of time on his backside, it's tough to throw anything down the field. When he was able to stand in the pocket and throw passes, I think at one point he was maybe 15 or 17 or something like that. So the efficiency goes down the longer you have to hold on to the football and the more you're out there throwing it around because, again, they've got you where they want you now. They've made you one-dimensional. They've hurried up your offense. They're getting you in situations, and especially if you're also having penalties during that time, when you're shooting yourself in the foot, and the opposing defense is going effectively, then it's going to be almost impossible. As you heard Sean Payton say, look, we couldn't beat anybody today. That's the kind of game the Saints played today. I don't know if there was an NFL team that they would have had success against today.
They're kicking us out, JD. No, we'll keep it right here, and we'll go to Drew Brees. They really wanted you to stop talking.
We're going to go to the infrared light here.
They really wanted you to stop talking. That's all it was. But we'll go over some stats here, JD, as we wait for quarterback Drew Brees. Again, the Atlanta Falcons defeating the New Orleans Saints 26-9. I didn't do a good job on my makeup anyway today, JD, so it's fine.
Me either. So.
Drew Brees completing 32 of 45 passes today for 287 yards. No touchdowns, obviously, and Taysom Hill getting a run at quarterback there. It's nice to have him back in the mix for the Saints. Another option to just throw in there.
Yeah, he's going to be what he is. He's the number 3 quarterback, but really when Drew's playing, he's the number 2 quarterback because Teddy Bridgewater ain't going to play unless Drew's not playing. So Taysom came out, threw a really nice pass to Michael Thomas, and he had a great 11-yard run. I say great 11-yard run because of the way he finishes it.
Yeah.
Because Taysom Hill knows he's going to get limited snaps. He's not going to run out of bounds. So he basically ran over a defensive back at the end of that. Those are the plays we've become accustomed to seeing him have.
Truck him, Taysom Hill, as I call him. And we saw that Michael Thomas reception there in the end zone. I'm just waiting for them to Photoshop the Michael Jackson toe touch.
He had a pretty good – well, actually, somebody already said, he was doing, his whole Michael Jackson thing, So, yeah, he looked really, really good. But Michael Thomas always looks good.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting some wealth spread among his teammates. As you mentioned, Jared Cook came along, played pretty well today. Alvin Kamara getting back into the mix, and that balance between he and Latavius Murray, a little bit delicate today. But, again, it's hard to get into a rhythm where you can't stay on the field. The offense spent a lot of time on the sideline watching Atlanta and getting ready to go play, but not seeing its defense convert on third down. And then when they got out there, they weren't able to convert on third downs or fourth downs late in the game. So it's just a difficult proposition. I don't know that a lot that Sean Payton will see on tape for tomorrow he will like. I can't think of a whole lot of things that there is to like about this.
And he said that. He said that plain and simple. He said, we wouldn't have beaten anyone today the way we played. And, again, they're going to watch film going into tomorrow, and it's a 24-hour rule, but you have to – thinking about being in the film room just kind of gives me chills because I wouldn't want to be a player sitting there for the Saints.
Yeah, this 24-hour rule, my foot, you want this to be like a 5-hour rule and get this one out of the way now. Unfortunately, you got to watch the film because you have to go in. You've got to see what needs to be corrected. But I guarantee you, the players, they already know. They know what they did wrong in this game. If you mess up, you're the first one who knows and the first one who understands. So they know before it even happens exactly what happened, why it happened. They can probably tell you without looking at film, hey, I was out of position. Hey, I shouldn't have done this. Hey, I shouldn't have done that. Had, I believe, defensively, 4 hands to the face penalties. 4. You might not see that over the course of a month, and there were 4 in a game. So those are things that they'll look at, and you know you already did it. It's something that you're not coached to do, so you know how to correct it.
Absolutely. And we saw an interception late in the game from Marcus Williams. How much have you seen Marcus Williams' development over the last 2 years? Obviously, anyone after the Minnesota Miracle would have maybe put their head in the dirt, but Marcus Williams has absolutely come back and just played phenomenally for the Saints defense, and he's playing with a chip on his shoulder.
Well, he's a guy he's got confidence. He knows he has ability. That Minnesota thing, of course, is going to affect anybody, and for him or anybody else to say it doesn't linger on you, that's not even reasonable to think. But he moved past it. He's a fantastic center fielder, a guy who's got great ball skills, and that's one of the reasons the Saints drafted him. On a deep pass like that, you expect to see him range over and make that interception, and he now leads the team. I think he has 3 interceptions this season. He's one of those guys, if it's in his vicinity and he gets his hands on it, he's probably going to come down with that ball. And unfortunately, the Saints aren't able to do anything with that one today. He does stop the drive, but they aren't able to capitalize with it. But he's a guy who they like what they have in him. He's a second-round pick, and he's a guy that the Saints felt like had first-round value. And a lot of times in these games, we see that value out of him.
Absolutely, and we're waiting for quarterback Drew Brees. It's like watching paint dry, waiting for him at the podium, but we will surely get that press conference to you as soon as he is at the podium. JD, another question I wanted to ask you is, what about Kiko Alonso? Because we've seen Alex Anzalone injured, unfortunately, this year with his shoulder, but he has come in and stepped up with that trade from the Miami Dolphins with Vince Beagle. He has come in for the Saints team, and he's played pretty well. We saw him level Matt Ryan there early in the game. He's picking up this defense pretty well.
Yeah, he's had some plays, and he gets some opportunities. The Saints play a lot of nickel, so when you have C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the field, maybe he doesn't get a chance to get out there as often as he would like to because you have a lot of sub-packages in the NFL today, and that's just the way it is. Saints have a couple of linebackers who they feel pretty good as three-down linebackers in A.J. Klein and in Demario Davis, and so then Kiko Alonso might come out, with a nickel situation. But when he's been on the field, we've seen some effectiveness out of him. We saw him on the field a lot too much today, along with his fellow defensive teammates. But he's adjusting to this defense. They felt like he was a smart player. He'd know what to do. He's been a starter in this league before he got to the Saints, so you're not going to put him into a situation where he's going to be uncomfortable.
JD, I'm going to interrupt you for quarterback Drew Brees.
No, I haven't seen the film. My eyes were down the field, but listen, they're a good pass rush team. And they got a lot of guys, and they rotate them, and I think they got after us at times. But listen, that's the great equalizer. In any game is the pass rush. If you have enough time, guys are eventually going to get open down the field, right? And so that's always the game within the game, right? On both sides of the ball, right? Their offensive front against our defensive front, and vice versa. And so, listen, this will always be a game about execution, right? And sometimes the difference between continuing a drive, right, getting a third down conversion, or making that big play is just it's inches or it's fractions of a second, right? And so, as I look to today, obviously 9 points is not what we aspire to score, especially at home. But man, there's just so many little things, so many plays here and there on every drive, where if it's just a split second here, just an extra foot here, whatever it is, just better execution all the way around that I think would have resulted in a better result, right? You continue the drive, you get a little momentum, you get, the tempo, and then all of a sudden now you're in scoring position. Well, we definitely didn't execute as well as we normally do or expect to do, but I don't think that had to do with anything. Had we come off a week where I was like, man, we were flat all week in practice and it just carried over. Rested coming off the bye, I felt like we had good practices. Up to on Monday, kind of Saints versus Saints, and then we got into the game planning with Atlanta just like we normally would on any week, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Unfortunately, not where it needed to be.
From your perspective, was it a miscommunication? What was it out there on the field that couldn't beat you?
Again, these are just like little things, but I'll just, I think the second drive of the game, I throw it to Traquan, right, and he jumps up for it and then just barely misses it, right? Kind of bobbles it, hits the ground, and it pops free. There was a defender underneath. Had I thrown the ball, allowed him to catch that ball in stride, not have to leave his feet. And then instead, that puts us to 3rd and long, and then we jump off sides, and then now we're 3rd and extra long, and then we don't get it and we punt the ball. The difference between us punting or us getting a 40-yard gain, right? There was a couple examples of that throughout the game. Say this, yes, for portions of a game, right? But then, man, when you have a chance to, been a part of many games, where maybe you don't play your best for the first 3 quarters, or maybe things just don't go your way, or you fight, scratch, claw, you keep fighting, and then you're down 6 and you have a chance to go win it. We missed on 3 4th downs or something like that. I mean, come on, that's not.
If the team has a normal week of practice, like you said, do you buy into the notion of coming out flat, or is it all kind of like you're talking about?
Execution. It's all execution, and again, It's not some, grand, mind-boggling, and it's just little things here and there that put yourself into a better position to convert a third down or make a big play, create scoring opportunities. So that's really what it is. And I'm sure, I can't think where, man, if we just make that play, it's a totally different game. Yeah. I'd say that's one of the bigger things that we're lacking right now offensively is that fast start of really any time where, man, we've just come out like gangbusters and just, it's been kind of a slow start, and then we kind of find ourselves, and then, maybe we break it open in the second half. But I'd say that's definitely an area where we can improve, and we'll need to and want to get to where we want to go. Yeah, that's another thing. Look, I don't know how many first downs we and allowed them to continue drives, but I think just looking at the stat sheet, I think they got 6. At least half or more than half of those were on third down, right? Where, man, we're off the field, and all of a sudden we're giving them the ball back, and they're going down and getting points. So that's obviously something that I know our guys are talking about on the other side of the ball. Is that, man, don't give them any freebies, right? For us offensively, it's, man, a penalty here and there all of a sudden makes it 3rd and 15 as opposed to 3rd and 5 or 7 or 8, and then your percentages of converting those go way down. So there's those areas certainly where we can get better and we can improve. And when we're off the field, let's defensively, and let's get off the field. Let's get the offense back on there, and then offensively, and we put ourselves in manageable positions. Man, we're going to convert a lot of third downs. We're going to keep drives alive. We're going to go score points. So that was a big factor in this game as well. Well, so listen, I pride myself on getting the ball out, right? Now listen, there's times where you got to hold it, and the situation, the circumstance calls for it, right? You're going to hang in there because you got to push that ball down the field, and, man, you take the sack, and if that's the worst thing that happens, then that's okay, There's other times where, man, even if we get beat, or even if that guy's not supposed to be there, but he's about to take me down, and find a way to get out of it, buy a little extra time, or just get rid of the ball so I can avoid the sack, and then maybe that gives us a better chance on third down now. So instead of taking a 7-yard loss and we're at 3rd and 15, maybe we're 3rd and 7, and we got a lot better chance of converting that. So again, all the little things that played a big factor in this game, right? Making some of those plays, just extra split second, or game of inches, playing the percentages, running the ball better, avoiding the sack, avoiding the negative play, not committing the unforced errors and the penalties. So, man, lop them all together, and that's what happened today, right? And some lack of execution kind of all the way around just encompasses all that. So that pretty much summed up the game right there. We shouldn't need any more questions. All right, cool, thanks.
All right, that was quarterback Drew Brees. Your New Orleans Saints falling to the Atlanta Falcons at home 26-9 and going to 7-2 on the season. That'll do it for the New Orleans Saints postgame show presented by Verizon. I'm Caroline Gonzalez. This is John DeShazier. Thanks for joining us on today's show.